Hey Tap Fam, Mike here. Do you want to fill your fridge with unique craft beers, ciders, or seltzers that you can't find locally? Then Tavour is your answer. I partner with them to bring you this exclusive offer for my Taproom listeners. When you use the promo code TAPROOM25, you get a $10 credit towards your next purchase when you spend $25 in the app or online. Tavour has it all, from IPAs to stouts, sours, ciders, and so much more. So make sure you use the promo code TAPROOM25 to get a $10 credit towards your next purchase. And now, on to the episode. All right, and we're back. This is episode 96 of the Taproom Podcast. I'm your host, Mike. Oh, man. Not too tired today, surprisingly. It being Sunday morning. Had a good time yesterday. Went out to a few breweries with a friend. We went to Green Cheek and then Unsung and Monkish. Tried to hit everywhere too, but that place was a madhouse. They're having some like winter wonderland kind of thing, but it was a good time. Good time yesterday. Got to have some good beer. Yeah, it's a good time. Let's see, what do we got? So this week's episode is the Daniel Monnot episode of Pinter USA. He is the brewery operations manager. Honestly, really good dude and just really cool to talk to and hear about his journey and hear about the process of how Pinter works and all that stuff. I'm not going to give anything away. We'll save that for the interview. But yeah, just a great dude. And I'm looking forward to you guys hearing that. I'm actually going to go record in a couple of hours. I'm going to be over at Feathered Serpent in La Puente, so that should be pretty fun. I'm looking forward to that. And then on Tuesday, I'll be recording with Danny over at Hop Saint, so I'm excited about that one. And then hopefully sometime this week as well, I'll be able to record with Beer Dad and Brewed to do a collab episode. So that should be fun. All right, now that that's all out of the way, what do we got this week? Bill Belichick fucking signed with North Carolina. Crazy. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not sure how that's all going to work out, but I mean, Bill Belichick's a good coach, and if he surrounds himself with the right coaches, the right people, I mean, and especially recruiting, obviously recruiting's way different than it is in the NFL. So we'll see how he does. I honestly hope for nothing but the best for him. What else we got? Travis Hunter won the Heisman. Guy was legit all year. Can't really deny that. Not the biggest Colorado guy, but I mean, kudos to him and Coach Prime and all those guys. They really turned it around compared to last year. So good for them. What else we got? Juan Soto is a Met. Honestly, I was kind of shocked. I thought for sure he was going to end up with the Dodgers or something like that. And crazy that he's going to be a Met. But I mean, the Mets spend money sometimes, and we'll see how it plays out. But I mean, Juan Soto's a generational talent, so as long as he can stay healthy, they're going to be fine. Let's see. Bowl season. What is he saying? I love you, man. He's like, it's beach season. It's beach season. But bowl season is here. The playoffs start this coming Saturday. So you know what I'm going to be doing. Absolutely nothing and watching the playoffs all day. I mean, it starts on Friday with Notre Dame and Indiana. I think Notre Dame's favored by 7.5. I mean, I feel like this is going to be Notre Dame's toughest test. I mean, I'm not trying to knock Notre Dame or anything like that, but they haven't really played any any good teams. They didn't play Clemson this year. Yeah, they beat up on SC, but SC is not even ranked. So we'll see what happens. I still think Notre Dame wins that game against Indiana. Until they beat a top 15 team or top 10 team, then we'll see. But Indiana obviously being ranked 8th. But yeah, I think Notre Dame wins that game, and we'll see what happens in the next round. But yeah, I got Notre Dame in that game, and I'm not going to spread on any of these. I'm probably going to play some parlays this coming week, but that should be fun. And we got SMU at opening against Penn State. Penn State's favored by 8.5. Yeah, Penn State, they've looked really good in some games. They've looked really bad in some games. But for the most part, they can score, right? So, I could see Penn State winning that game. I think 8.5 seems like a lot. especially if it gets in a shootout. But I think the difference is like if Penn State and SMU are playing each other, if SMU gets down like they did last week against Clemson, then Penn State's just going to roll. I don't like Penn State's not going to let them come right back into the game. So I'm going to take Penn State in that game. Clemson, Texas, I think that one's pretty simple. It's Texas all the way. And then we got Tennessee and Ohio State. Could be good. I want to pound the over on that game so bad. It's like 47, I think. So I think I'm going to take that. But I think Ohio State wins that game. And then I feel like the next game, because it'll be the winner of that plays Oregon. I think Ohio State wins that game against Oregon. I want Oregon to win the Natty. I do. But I feel like Ohio State wins it. But we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. Oh, it's exciting. It's first college football season, first college football playoff. So let's see what we got. We got some polls and questions before we jump into the interview. The polls this week. And was I ready? Of course I wasn't. Let's see here. Oh, that's pretty cool. On this 1 year ago today, I recorded with Ian. Dang, that's awesome. All right. So the poll this week was like, because I had people put in their top 4 Christmas or like their favorite Christmas movies. And this one was I had the top 4 ended up being Christmas Vacation, Home Alone, The Grinch, but the Jim Carrey version, and Elf. 49% of the vote was to Christmas Vacation, which it is my favorite. Then in second place was The Grinch, which was the Jim Carrey version at 24%, and then a tie, both at 14% for Home Alone and Elf. Now this may be like sacrilege to some people, but I'm just not the biggest Home Alone fan. I loved it as a kid. Just don't really care to watch it now. Let's see. The last poll that we did before we jump into the interview was the favorite Christmas time beers. It was between porters, stouts, and winter ales. Another tie for second place. It was porters and stouts both at 24%, and then winter ales at 53% of the vote. So, all right. Well, I think I've talked long enough, but before we jump into the interview, I do want to mention again my buddy Art, LA Brew Life and labrewlife.shop. His merch, love this. Like, I love all of his stuff that he has. I was actually wearing one of his hats the other day, but I mean, that's why they wanted to create like this initial collection to help, like people's beer order. Sometimes you have a light crispy lager and for that, there's a crispy classic tea. It's essential and light. And when you want a full bodied like West Coast IPA or hazy, try their medium weight street drape tea. And of course, if you're feeling like ordering a robust, like Imperial Stout or double IPA or heavy hitter, that's where they have the heavyweight box tea. And honestly, like any brewery, or any brewery would do, they're going to come out with different, t-shirts, seasonal stuff, special editions. So stay tuned. Make sure you go visit labrewlife.shop, gear up, drink local, and rep LA Brew Life. And don't forget to use promo code TAPROOM for 10% off your purchase at checkout. All right, and now on to the interview. Cheers, Tap Fam. All right, guys, we're back in the tap room, and I'm your host, Mike, and I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Danny Monnot from Pinter. How's it going today, sir?
Good, Mike. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing well. Thank you, and thank you for coming on. I'm just going to crack a beer, but I mean, I was so intrigued when I saw your guys' product. So before we jump into your craft beer journey, could you tell us a little bit about Pinter?
Yeah, so Pinter, we've been around for about 4 years in the UK with all of that. And we just launched in the US about a year ago. But what Pinter is, and you kind of can see one behind me here, It's an all-in-one homebrewing vessel. So you buy this vessel from us, and it's the only thing that you need to ferment, condition, carbonate, and dispense your beer.
Wow.
So you buy one of those from us, and then we also sell the kit, right? Whether you want to make an IPA, brown ale, a stout, cider, seltzer, pale ales, ESBs, we have all of those different kits, so to speak. And you buy one of those kits from us, and, you open the kit, you have a QR code right there, you scan the QR code, it leads you to our app, and then how to brew the beer takes about 20 minutes, but it's step by step with animations in our app.
Wow.
Yeah, so, right, you clean the vessel with a purifier, that's again included in the kit. After that, all you need to do is fill up the Pinter with water, pour in our syrup-based extract, Add the yeast that's also included in the kit, give it a good shake, add the brewing dock on the bottom, and let it sit on your counter. Again, the app will tell you it's around 7 days, maybe 10. After that, you get a notification on your phone, the brewing's all done. You remove the brewing dock from the pinter vessel, and what that does is that helps separate out, right, your yeast sedimentation and other trub, right, that traditionally comes from fermentation to make sure you get a clear beer. Discard that right down the drain. When you take your pinter vessel, you turn it horizontally just like this, add it, throw it in your fridge, right, so it can condition and carbonate. When you wait about 4 or 5 days, again, the app will tell you how long, depending upon the beer recipe. And after that, you're good to go. You get 18 12-ounce beers right on tap. So there's
That's
no
cool.
transferring, no bottling. It's already carbonated. Again, it's an all natural carbonation from the fermentation process. And yeah, that beer in the pinter lasts, we say 30 days, but I've had pinters in my fridge for a handful of months and they're fine. Again, it's all because there's no transferring, right? So there's no oxidation. Beer doesn't go flat. Yeah, it's pretty great. And the word that I've tend to use a lot is elegant. It's just a very elegant process and an elegant design.
Honestly, that's really cool. And when I saw the design of them, that's what intrigued me the most. I was like, oh man, that's cool because I'd never really seen anything like that. And for me, I've only ever homebrewed once, and I was like, the guy was such a pro, and I was like, like he just told me, oh, pour this in now or do this. And so it wasn't like I wasn't doing like the steps myself and trying to figure it out.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you guys make it so easy. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's really what I love about it because I started my journey as a home brewer like most professional brewers. And yeah, home brewing is the traditional method is it's costly, it's time consuming,
Hmm.
and it's hard, right? There's a lot of different ways that you can I want to say mess up, but right, make faults and make mistakes. And the pinter takes all of that out of there, and it's incredibly approachable for anyone. Again, it takes all in all, mixing everything up takes about 20 maybe 30 minutes, and then again all you got to do is wait 2 weeks and you have beer on tap. Whereas home brewing, if you want to mash in the grains, steep it, lauter it, boil it, cool it down, you're talking about an 8 hour day, 6 8 hour day, which when you're younger, if you have that time, it can be fun. It's a nice experience. But even for me, where I want to say I grew up, but right,
Hmm.
I have a family, I've got kids, obviously I have a full-time job. I don't have the space because it's all for my kids, and I don't have the time to do traditional home brewing anymore. This is really a great way to kind of keep that hobby, or to introduce others to the hobby, because it is so approachable.
Yeah, of course. Because I mean, if they can start out doing something like that, and then maybe wanna, like, maybe if they really into it, then they can maybe try to, go to the other way, like, like with like getting women into the kitchen and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like yeah, it's just a really cool product. And I saw the West Coast IPA, like, oh, and I was like, oh man, okay, I'm probably gonna have to order one of these so I could try the West Coast and stuff like that. That's like my go-to.
Nice. Yeah. Of course, here in the US, IPAs are king. They
Hmm.
have been for at least a decade, if not more. So, we offer all types of recipes, or kits for everyone, for all, anyone that, brown ales, stouts, porters, IPAs, ESBs. Of course, we're a British company, anything like that. And, we're coming out with new recipes, new kits, almost monthly at this point.
That's awesome. And how did you start the like your whole journey? Like, well, how did you even get to the point where you were with Pinter?
Yeah. So, just like, again, most professional brewers, at which point I was, I started as a home brewer back in 2012, give or take, 13 years ago. And, I really fell in love with it from a cousin, an older cousin who was a home brewer. And, it's like, wait a minute, you can make beer from home and it can taste, this good.
Yeah.
I just got hooked. And, I homebrewed for a handful of years, throughout college. And it was really right within what I loved to do, not just the kind of the artistic and creative outlet, but the science, right? In college, I was studying to be a chemical engineer. So like the chemistry and the biology and science all behind fermentation and mashing and brewing was with all everything that I just wanted. I moved to Chicago around again right around that point, 2012, 2013,
Okay.
and I knew I wanted to get into the brewing business. So of course I was like cold emailing, small craft breweries in Chicago, just trying to get my foot in the door, things like that. And where I started was just at a new brew pub that was opening at that time in 2013 called Dry Hop in East Lakeview in Chicago. And I didn't even start in their brew house. I started as a bar back, really. So I
Oh
was
wow.
food running, washing glassware, that type of stuff. And they knew from the get go that I wanted to be in the brew house. And luckily for me, they needed help kind of almost immediately after opening. So I spent about 2 years being a part-time, assistant brewer and, part-time bar back, essentially just washing glassware and food running and really just kind of learning the trade that way. After about 2 years, they opened up another brew pub a couple miles down the road in a different neighborhood, basically. But I was, gratefully tapped to kind of be their lead brewer. So that gave me my first full-time brewing job, which was fantastic. Again, really learned a lot, especially from a recipe development standpoint. And, after about a year and a half there, I moved to Cleveland. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, so it's kind of, that old adage where I met a girl, I wanted to move
Hmm.
back home, start a family, all of that it happened to me. So I moved back to Cleveland and started working for a brewery called Platform. And I started in there. They had a brew pub and a production facility. So I
Oh
started
wow.
at their brew pub. Again, that's what I was good at. I knew recipe development, cranking out, new beers, trying new raw materials, helping develop beers that would hopefully go for production. Did that again for about a year and a half up until about 2018. Right around then, I was able to actually move to the production facility. Something I always wanted that challenge, right, of kind of more technical brewing. And I became their head brewer in around 2018, kind of leading their production facility.
That's awesome.
Yeah, platform at that time, we had a 30 barrel brew house and a 60 barrel brew house. And I think we were doing about 20,000, maybe 25,000 barrels a year. So kind of a small regional brewery, a lot of growth. About a year after I took that position, our co-founders actually sold the business to Anheuser-Busch.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, a big jolt, big change. Growing up in the craft brewing industry back then, you were always taught to, I don't say like despise like macro brewing and
Yeah.
everything like that. So it was really hard for not just me, but even, all of our other, shift brewers, our cellarmen, cellarwomen to come to terms with that. Like, we were working for the big evil brewery sort of thing.
Yeah. Of course.
And, after some time and I was a part of that for from 2018 until they shut down the brewery in 2022 or 2023. I don't remember. Nothing at the end of it, really nothing could be further from the truth. Like it was a kind of a blessing, I would say, to work for Anheuser-Busch, just because they empowered us to make sure that we could make the best beer. Giving us what bounds amounts to be almost endless resources. From capital investments to the plethora of industry experience that they have at their fingertips from their macro brewing side, but also their what they call their craft brewing. Oh crap, what was it called? We were one of about 13 breweries that they owned at that time. And so, we kind of all shared together our experiences and our knowings. And, there were some individuals in that alliance that were, had decades of experience and were these luminaries essentially in the craft beer world. And
Hmm.
so I was incredibly fortunate to be able to work with people like Brett Porter, and a lot of others who, again, was just able to share so much wealth of knowledge with me and with the rest of the platform team. Again, so we were part of Anheuser-Busch up until they closed platform wholly, and that was in 2023. Yeah, it was February of 2023. So they made the decision to close the business completely. So, production stopped. We laid off our entire staff.
Wow.
All sales, all product just ceased immediately. That was one of the hardest days, obviously of my professional career. Having to walk away from a brewery that I put a lot of work into, and not just me, but everyone else that I worked with.
Of course, of course.
I was fortunate enough. I stayed on for a couple more months just to help wind down the business, help clear inventory out, and things of that nature. Kind of at that point, I actually stepped away from the beer world for a couple months. Worked for a food manufacturer locally here. It was pretty hard. I think it definitely made me realize that nothing can replace the love that I have for making beer. And not just that, but the community that you're a part of, whether that's, locally, that the craft brewing community with the other brewers, or again, in Anheuser-Busch's case, with the other craft breweries that they own, because everyone at the time, you're in the industry because you love it, right? It's a passionate industry. So right around the beginning of this year, I was fortunate enough to join the Pinter team, around May or June, I think. And, again, what attracted me to the team and to the product is, again, that elegance and of the design. The Pinter team this year, actually, the engineering team won a prestigious Red Dot Award, which they're incredibly proud of.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and not just like the design and the function and the product itself, but again, what I'll come back to is the community. The Pinter community, again, albeit young in the U.S., it harkens back to my homebrewing days and to my early days in the craft beer world, where you're surrounded by these people who love beer and want to talk about beer and are just so passionate about it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about the craft beer community. It's just always wanting people to help out and just being able to be there for one another, stuff like that. That's the best.
Mm-hmm.
So with Pinter, like when it all started for you, what was that like? Was it just something you found like online where you were, or did they approach you about the opportunity, or how did that all come about?
Yeah, so it's, to an extent, it's almost who you know.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the old co-founders of Platform, he was tapped to actually be the U.S. CEO for Pinter. So he kind of became their first U.S. employee to help roll out the Pinter product to the U.S. His name's Paul. And, Paul, he... And the UK employees also knew, as well did Paul, is the UK palate and the US palate, or the UK consumer and the US consumer, are two very different consumers.
100%.
So again, they're a company that have been producing these kits for their customers in the UK for 3-4 years, and so their whole portfolio is, it abounds with, they had a handful of ciders. Ciders are very big in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
ESBs, pale ales, porter stouts, and, they had maybe one or two, IPAs, of the American nature, not necessarily English IPAs. But again, very different than what US customers are used to. So he kind of, reached out to me pretty quickly to see if I was interested in helping kind of recipe development, kind of help calibrate the product for the U.S. consumer. And, of course, I was itching to get back into the beer world.
Of course.
And I jumped at the opportunity, especially being able to, after trialing the product, it was again, especially for kind of a homebrewing product, incredibly elegant.
Man, that's cool. I mean, and like that's one of the things I love the most about this industry too is like everybody's kind of, the destination that they want to go that they have for themselves or that they set for themselves is similar, but the journey to get there is completely different for everybody. And that's like, I just find it fascinating. And it never like, it doesn't matter how many times I hear a story, like, and there's obviously, like Dick said, everybody's is different, but it's always like so motivating to me. Like, and I hope it motivates other people to get out there and be like, hey, my, I gotta, I got to give this a shot if they really want it.
Yeah, yeah. I was fortunate enough to kind of get into the scene or the industry when it was very much growing still.
Mm-hmm.
Early on, double-digit volume growth in the craft beer industry. Unfortunately, it's not the case now anymore, especially really after the advent of hard seltzer. There's been a couple of pretty hard punches to the craft beer industry, starting with that,
Yeah.
COVID right behind that. And it's been a tough go of it for not just like the craft beer and like commercial industry, but the home brewing industry as well has shown some stagnation kind of at best.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're really hoping and really pushing to kind of get people, especially younger people my age or younger, into these hobbies, and into brewing and home brewing because it can be very lovely and it can really help build a local community for you and be able to share something that you love with others who also love it, but also your own friends and family. The Pinter itself is a very apt product for social gatherings.
Oh, for sure. And I can see the blue one right behind you, and that's my favorite color. So it's like I'm probably gonna have to pull the trigger on that one.
Yeah.
So I was saying you were homebrewing and stuff like that, but was there like a craft beer that you tried when you were younger and you were like, man, this is what beer could be kind of thing?
Yeah, there's a couple that come to mind. Again, growing up in Northeast Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be remiss not to mention Great Lakes Christmas Ale.
Okay.
It's one of kind of those stalwarts and in my locality. And I say it not just from like the tasting profile of the beer, but again, harkening back just to like those memories and emotions that
Mm-hmm.
these beers could have. Anytime I bring it up or I have one, it always harkens me back to, of course, the holidays with my family and being able to share that beer for the first time, with my older brothers, right? I may have been 19, 20 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
my dad's there handing me a Christmas ale, right?
That's awesome.
And so, it's obviously, very emotive for me. Other than that, from like exploring the craft beer landscape at the time, I was fortunate enough to it's gonna sound weird, but it's fortunate enough to go to school in Indiana to
Mm-hmm.
college. And, at the time, again, this is between 2008, 2012, Three Floyds is kind of this, hot brewery and, very ahead of their times. And so, Alpha King for me is one of those beers that is like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
this is what beer can taste like, overtly aggressive, overtly bitter, kind of unapologetic in its way is something that really caught my attention and really opened me up to what beer could be. Again, not just Alpha King, but really the Three Floyds portfolio at the time with Robert the Bruce, right? A Scottish ale as well. Those were, and Gumball Head, their aggressive
Mm-hmm.
wheat beer. Those were all beers that kind of really opened me up to the craft beer world.
That's awesome, man. I mean, what's better than that? I mean, you get to have like, especially growing up, like, cause I feel like Sierra Nevada was probably like the first one I ever really liked,
Mm-hmm.
um, but like, I remember having like Dogfish Head, like trying Dogfish Head for the first time, and it being in California, it wasn't easily accessible
Sure.
to get Dogfish Head like in the early 2000s. But man, it's crazy what craft beer can kind of, because I said I've never been a brewer, never done anything like that. I love the craft of it, and I love being able to go to different places and try and almost like making it like a scavenger hunt, trying to find the best hoppy pilsner out there, or
Sure.
New Zealand style pilsner, lager, or anything like that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just a
fun.
great community.
It is. It is. Yeah.
Do you remember the first beer you ever brewed? Home brewed?
Homebrewed. Yes. Yes, I do. Just like most people, I was a very avid book reader, and very fortunate enough to come into the homebrewing world when I did, because there is the Brewers Association was kind of the trade association, not just for home brewers but for commercial breweries, and they were really starting to come out and have a lot of beer publications, right? And of course, the first one anyone ever reaches to is How to Brew by John Palmer. So of course, and again just tells you how to brew, whether you want to do extract brewing, all grain brewing, and it explains everything very well. Of course, at the back of the book, a bunch of recipes to try, and of course, one of the first ones I used, he had an all extract recipe for nut brown ale. Yeah, yeah, I wish I could tell you what was in it. I have no idea anymore. But I didn't have any equipment. I think I had to go out and buy probably a big enough pot to use, right, to boil the wort. But I did it on the kitchen stove. And I just remember, one of the few things I do remember is how long it took to boil, like a 5 gallon batch or 6 gallons worth of water on your stovetop. It took forever.
I bet.
Yeah. The beer itself was, I will say I don't remember liking it, is probably what I'll say. Very unimpressed with it. It's my first try. But yeah, after that, I think it didn't scratch the itch enough for me. And so, of course, after that, I, bought essentially like a Gatorade cooler, right? Is what you had to do. It's very DIY-esque, which is really fun in the homebrewing community back then, where buy a Gatorade cooler, you buy some copper piping, you have to cut it up into pieces and make almost like a filter on the bottom of it so you can do all grain brewing. It's a very extensive process, and at that point in time, I couldn't get enough of it, which is amazing. Other than that, I would say kind of my first commercial beer that I did, again, so it was at a place called Dry Hop Brewers. This would have been back in like 2014, probably maybe 2013. Was a rye saison with roasted dandelion root.
Oh man, what was that like?
It was earthy. I was like, this is gonna be so weird. And at the end of the day, it was just like really earthy. Luckily, it wasn't over like dirty or anything like that, like dirt. But again, just there was the Brewers Association had a ton of books, and at the time, I was probably reading Radical Brewing by Randy Mosher, and he just was like, don't be afraid to throw anything into your beers. Have fun with it. And I was what I went for. Beer was called, I think it was called 93 to Infinity. Why it was called that, I think it was like I think for Dry Hop, it was like the 93rd batch of beer. And, our other brewer at the time, Adrian, he was a big, big, really big into music. And so I think he just helped me name it after the Souls of Mischief song, 93 to Infinity. So.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a cool story. Do you remember your worst brew day ever? Or have you had a bad brew day? I mean,
of course. Yes, of course. What person hasn't?
Yeah.
Let me try to think of one. It's one that's easily that comes to mind. So it was when I was at Platform at the brew pub. So this is a 10-barrel system. And again, like my job is obviously to make good beer for people to drink, at the tap room, have fun with that. Different raw materials, different malt, different hops, different recipes, new products, fruit, purees, all that fun stuff, different yeast, but also different processes, right? Try to tinker with different things in the beer making process to, either help increase efficiencies, elicit new flavors, stuff like that. And one of our co-founders came to me with this contact of by this processing technology business who wanted to trial out, I don't even remember what it was. I think it was like a new type of like shear pump or something like that. That isn't like, they don't know really the beer world or the brewing world, but
Hmm.
They think it might help us like increase our efficiencies in the mash and the lauter, stuff like that. And I'm like, sure, like we'll give it a go. We'll see what it can do, sort of thing. Not really knowing a whole lot again for me, still being like a pub brewer on the technical side of how to efficiently lauter and all that. And boy, it did not go well. So essentially what we did, right, we made our mash, it's all grain beer, and then we recirculated through like their shear pump, maybe half of our mash mix. And essentially what it did is it pulverized our grain into something even finer,
Oh,
almost like
wow.
a dust. It was already a mash, so it kind of came out of their shear pump looking like almost like cooked oatmeal and kind of like the thickness consistency of cooked oatmeal.
Oh, no.
And for like lautering beer or straining out the liquid from the grain, you need a very coarse bed almost, from the
Hmm.
husks of the grain to help create those voids to filter your beer or your liquid out efficiently. And so when you pulverize them very small, you're just making this gum almost. And so when we started to try to lauter or right strain out the liquid from those grains, if we're on a 10 barrel system trying to get 12 barrels of wort, I think we got over maybe 1 or 2 barrels of liquid before the,
Oh,
the whole
no.
the whole bed of the mash just kind of collapsed on itself. And, we probably spent 1 or 2 hours extra just trying to like reset the bed, clear it out, right? And it was just like a nightmare. And so we had to end up calling the brew day, you know, didn't knock anything out into a fermenter, dumped what was in the kettle, and when we had to go grain out, normally you have a relatively dry, spent grain that you just kind of have to shovel out into trash cans, wheel them out in the
Yeah.
back, pick them up and throw them into a dumpster, or you have a farmer take them away. But our grain was still so wet and so kind of liquidy and mushy that as soon as we open the hatch to the mash tun, it just comes flying out at us.
Oh,
And so
no.
we have this, big mess on the brew on the floor, trying to scoop out like this soup almost and having to lift it up. It's just that much heavier with all the water. It was it was real bad. The way
Man, that sounds like a rough
learned a
day,
lot.
man.
Yeah, I mean you learn a lot from your mistakes, and I definitely started reading up on louder efficiencies and proper techniques for loudering and all of those things, setting your mill gap and making sure you have the right crush and all of that and what not to
Man.
do. So
Oh, man.
yeah,
I wanted to ask because, I mean, so how long did you live in Chicago?
I was there for about 4 years.
Okay. By chance, did you ever meet Doug from Rev?
I never met him personally, but
Okay.
no, but I mean, even at my time, I was, one of the first, when I first moved to Chicago, actually, I lived in Logan Square,
Okay.
probably about half a mile from the Rev Brew Pub. I was actually a
Mhm.
Mug Club member my first year there back in 2012. Love the space. They actually just announced they're closing that brew pub.
Yeah.
Yeah, very sad. They were open for 15 years or have been open for 15 years. But no, I mean, I follow Doug, on Instagram. He has this amazing blog, Beer Cruncher, right, where he kind of goes,
Hmm.
obviously I love the science behind beer making and all of that, but really at my time at Platform, being one of the leaders, I also really became intrigued on the commercial strategies of breweries, right? Especially bigger breweries, and Doug really kind of pulls the curtain away and really gives you a lot of information on that.
Yeah, 100%. He's just a really nice guy, and like all the different things he does, like how he sees like these different trends and knows all this stuff. It's just crazy, man. But he's such a nice guy. I got to talk to him back in August, and it was such a fun time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, and that's it, is like you see and you meet some of these people in the beer industry, and, they're just so passionate, and they're also just like, they're so kind,
Hmm.
very good natured people.
Oh, 100%. And I wanted to talk to you a little some more about Pinter as well. So it's been about a year now, right, that they've been in the U.S.
Yeah.
So what do they like? What do you guys see that is like the most like, or like maybe like the most popular like style, like the styles to purchase, stuff like that? Because I know you guys obviously you guys have hazies, you have West Coast, you have all like pretty much anything under the sun. I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now it's not, uh, I, I'll say IPAs, right?
Oh,
Yeah. And I would probably say it's our, our space hopper. I don't know which one. We have two of them, kind of one without a hopper and one like a more West Coast with a hopper. And invariably it's probably going to be one of those two. But the other interesting thing that I think I've come to notice and also experience, especially with our kids, is we, especially with a lot of our kids coming from being UK inspired, I can't tell you the last time I went to the grocery store or even to a brew pub, a local brew pub, and found an ESB, right? They don't exist, right? Or even a brown ale or an amber ale,
100%.
right? And so, those, for obviously very commercial reasons, breweries don't have those on the grocery store shelves. But like for us, we're lucky enough where we can offer you those. And so you can still get well made, fresh beer for these styles that you just can't get unless you're going to exert a lot of energy searching your local craft beer scene and have to go to a brew pub or a tap room, to
Yeah.
get a brown ale or an ESB or something of that nature, right? Just even now, brewery tap rooms don't make a ton of those. But yeah, far and away, yeah, the IPAs do well, and we've surprisingly saw our stout dark matter in this past summer, right? You don't
Okay.
think of it as a summer beer, certainly. It did surprisingly well in the summer months.
And is it
And
like a dry stout or?
so I mean, it's on the lower end of the ABV. I think it's like a 5% stout.
Okay.
I would say it's probably, oh man, I'll call it an American stout, not overtly bitter. It's certainly not a sweet stout,
Okay.
but it's not like a dry Irish stout. It's not that dry. Yeah, I would probably call it an American stout, maybe an English stout, but I don't think it's that sweet. But yeah, and I think for me that just kind of again re reinforces that idea that people love the variety and want to see beers and want to be able to get beers that they can't find
Yeah.
commercially anymore.
And for Pinter, like I can imagine like the R&D that probably had to go into everything, but like the like for like the approach to like recipe development for stuff like that that maybe isn't as popular in the UK, and then reaching out to you for all of that. What was that like for you? Like just that approach.
Yeah, so that was, a lot of that they're really just relying on myself and for Paul on,
Hmm.
originally both of us coming, Paul again being one of the co-founders for Platform, we kind of always kind of revert back to, oh, we're a commercial brewery. And so
Hmm.
we just immediately say IPA, like what kind of beer should we make for the US palate? And we're like IPAs. But
Hmm.
it's like, well, how many different IPAs do you need, sort of thing? And is that really all you want to offer, right? And and for us, like again, these past 6 months have been pretty immense learning from our consumers, our all the active customers that we do have on what they're buying. Of course, we have all that type of data straight from our app, or our sales data too, on what sells well, and they're pretty vocal customers as well. As far as like recipe development goes and iterations and stuff like that,
Hmm.
we have a great product development team in the UK, Nick and Will, who've been with Pinter for a handful of years now. Excuse me. And of course, they know the Pinter really well. They know the raw materials really well. But again, the amazing thing, especially from a guy like me, who's very science based or almost like design of experiment based, these things, they don't take a ton of raw material and they only take two
Yeah.
weeks, to turn around. So I can make, or, Nick and Will can make, 5 different iterations of almost the same recipe, right? It's like, okay, I want to change the dark malt by 5%, right? So you have kind of the
Yeah.
original recipe, then you up it by 5%, you lower it by 5%, you maybe change out the hops that are in it, you change out the yeast, right? So you can, very easily create 5 to 7 different iterations of a recipe and really make sure that you get, the best version of itself in a
Wow.
relatively quick time, right? If you're a commercial brewery, you can't do that, in a 3 week time. Again, at best, you can make one batch of beer if you have a small, 5, 7 barrel system and you can put on your tap room and try to find sales and stuff like that. Or obviously you get your own, sensory feedback. But again, that takes 4 or 5 weeks to do all of that. And again, the amount of cost, raw material costs and labor costs it takes versus me, I can bang out, 5 or 6 of these in a couple hours. And 2 weeks later, I have a full fridge of pinters that I can just run through and take
Yeah.
my notes and really find out which one I like and, share that wealth of knowledge.
That's cool. I mean, like you said, because I guess maybe I didn't think about it that way, where it's like, yeah, you could just, maybe if you wanted to, you're like, oh, maybe I want it to be a little bit more like, hop forward, or maybe I
Hmm.
want a little bit more of this or a little bit more of that. Yeah, you can, 2 weeks worth of R&D, and then you get to have something to drink at the end of at that
Right.
2 weeks too. So there you go.
Yeah.
That's so awesome, man. And like when you were brewing, like, like on the at the brewery when you were brewing, what were some of your favorite styles to say, well, brew and drink?
Hands down, porters and stouts.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just something, I mean, to me, so like, again, it's emotive back to like my senses of those brew days
Hmm.
where the aroma, it's almost like when you wake up in the morning, if you're a coffee drinker, you wake up in the morning, you can smell that coffee brewing.
Oh
And,
yeah.
you just take that and you're not, it's still brewing. You don't have the cup in your hand yet, but you can smell it and you just get like this jolt of energy almost, or like that rush of endorphins. Like that's what that's what brewing porters and stouts is for me. You know, brings
That's
me
cool.
back again to those early days at Dry Hop or even at Platform of just, stirring in the mash and having those dark malts come in and just that plume of, chocolate, espresso, roast. I don't know, it's just emotive for me. As far as to drink, that when I was working at the breweries, I'll never pass up a good IPA. IPAs are still king. It's still what I drink the most of.
Yeah,
It's just so damn good.
of course.
Other than that, lagers, of course, especially in the last 5 years or so. Hoppy lagers. As an American, you can't get away from your hops, and I love hops.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, hop forward lagers. Lower ABV, which for us in the U.S. is anything 5% or less. Which is like, and that's the other funny thing about like the UK. Like a normal strength beer in the UK is 5% maybe.
Hmm.
If it's over 5%, that's like a high ABV beer in the UK.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for it's another kind of fun thing about the differences. And they're like, yeah, we'll make an IPA and we'll have it be 5%. I'm like, no, that's like a pale ale. Or an
Yeah,
IPA, it needs to be 7,
yeah, it's
maybe
like a
6.5.
session out here.
Yeah, but yeah, love IPAs, love lager. I love all beers, of course.
Same.
Porters and stouts. Again, Great Lakes here in Cleveland, they make, Edmund Fitzgerald is one of those iconic like American porters, and it is a really great beer. So yeah, I mean, I'll drink everything.
Oh yeah, same here. I love the only ones I've never really been able to get into is like a Scotch ale.
Sure.
I've tried. I just couldn't get into it. But stouts too, yeah. Like I do like stouts. I don't drink them as often. Depending if it's like I mean, I'll still crush Guinness or like Murphy's and stuff like that too. But I can't drink them as often, during the year. I love lagers and pilsners so much that it's like, and West Coast.
Sure.
So it's like if I go somewhere, it's like that's usually the first thing I order, because I know if that's good at the brewery, then probably everything else that they make is going to be pretty good.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome.
Um, Oh yeah, it's the best. And to me, it's like doing that. But like stouts are great. Like I do a stouts giving episode every year, so I'll
Oh
get a couple
wow,
different stouts, and I'll usually do a remote interview with like a friend in Chicago or like a friend out of the country or something like that. So it's always kind of fun to do stuff like that.
that's really fun.
Oh yeah. One thing I've been loving to like, I love to ask is if you could ever collaborate with with a brewer, maybe like a friend or like a brewery that you had a chance to maybe do like a collaboration with. Well, who do you, would there be one out there for you?
Oh man, boy. I mean, from like a unicorn almost, like
Yeah,
you
like
know,
your white whale.
white whale. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Probably Allagash, Mountain
Okay.
Maine. Yeah, just like obviously Allagash White again is one of those iconic beers, and at least for me, for the craft beer world. The reasons I would say is, again, that beer is one of the best for the style in the U.S. It's almost what
Hmm.
everything has always been based out off of. At least for my generation of brewers. If you're older than me, it might be Celis, Celis White when they were still around. But the brewery itself and their culture is something that is to be, I think, so admired and is not, you don't see a ton of it, right? They're kind of brewery that they've been around a long time. I don't know when they started, probably something like 88 or early 90s. And they stuck to their guns, right? On, throughout this wave of the craft beer industry and its growth, they stuck with Allagash White. They didn't try to follow the trends. They're still very successful for it. And when the opportunities came for, almost like explosive growth, again in the early 2000s, late 2000s, early 2010s, they didn't take it, right? They would never sacrifice quality over the
Of
quantity of
course.
the beer, or even when they have the opportunity for expansion from an equipment standpoint for more capacity, they instead to come back to like their culture roots of sustainability and instead use that capital investment for, I think it was solar panels for the brewery, right? So, for them, it's never been a game of an end game of growth, right? It's something that, they've protected their culture, and that is something, especially in the last, 15 years of the craft beer world, pretty uncommon. And yes, again, Allagash White is literally a white whale in Ohio. They don't distribute. So anytime
Hmm.
I do leave this state, I have to make sure I seek out Allagash White.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I haven't had one. I feel like, geez, it must. Yeah, I mean, it had to have been at least 4 or 5 years since I've had anything from there. But I mean, because every once in a while we'll see it out here. More at least like my local place will get some, and I get to have to have a bottle of it. So but it's been a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, it's one of those beers where when you do have it, like I hype it up, but
Hmm.
it always lives up to the hype when I get to drink it. So
That's good, and I'm sure like it takes you back too.
it does. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's such a flavorful beer. They really nail the body on it. Obviously, it's this a wheat beer. It's a wit, but the body is just so fluffy and pillowy, almost like a perfect hazy. But it's a wit, and it is just so aromatic with that coriander. It's an incredible beer. It really is.
that's awesome, man. Just a couple more things. Like I said, I don't want to keep you too long. One thing I love to ask people as well is like if they had like their desert island beers, and you could pick usually a domestic and a craft.
Okay.
So, what would
Mhm.
yours be?
Yeah. So assuming like again, I'm a seasonal drinker, right? So if this is like a desert island where it's hot, I'm not bringing an IPA with me. It's just
Yeah.
too big, too heavy. This is gonna be a cop out, but I'll probably pick Allagash White. They are incredibly refreshing, pretty, very quaffable for me, and still full flavor. If I have to go with like a domestic or macro beer,
Hmm.
and everyone in the UK always makes fun of me because of how much I say like this is my macro beer that I drink, it's probably Heineken,
Okay.
just because it's
I haven't had one in so long. I feel like.
Yeah, it's like even for me, it's like the closest thing I can get to like a continental lager.
Okay.
Um, at my grocery store that's relatively cheap, right? So,
Hmm.
it's different enough from like the bubblegum heavy, at least bubblegum heavy to me, Buds, Bud Lights, those beers. So yeah, I'd probably pick Heineken. If not Heineken, then it would be Corona. But if I can't have limes, then I won't pick Corona. So
Yeah. I think I've always been more of like I mean, because I couldn't, yeah, I think Corona needs a lime, but I feel like I
yeah.
always loved Pacifico a little bit more because I felt like it
Mhm.
didn't necessarily need it. Sure, it does make it better, but I
Right.
don't think it necessarily needs it. You know what I wanted to ask you too? Like, growing up in Ohio, a big Browns fan or
Yeah,
not?
I mean, by like default. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'm always curious because I had a buddy of mine was lived in Ohio, or now he has Unsung Brewing in Anaheim. But he grew up out there, and he was like, that was like the one thing him and his like dad they would always, well, not the one thing, but him and his dad would always bond over like Ohio sports teams and stuff like that. So
Yeah, no, I think, for me and my family, it was we didn't go to too many Browns games growing up, but the Indians or the Guardians now
okay,
uh, was especially in the 90s, their heyday, they were obviously really good. But yeah, summertime at the Indians games was big for us. So, I'm very excited to when my kids get just enough older to be able to
yeah.
bring them to the Guardians games. And they still do Dollar Dog Night, which is amazing. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's worth it just for that.
exactly. Yeah.
That I was gonna say too, because one of the things, I mean, as growing up as a kid, like Major League was like the
Yeah.
movie for me.
Right.
So, I mean, like Ricky Vaughn will always be, just like an idol in my
Yeah.
eyes. So that's awesome. That's so cool. I mean, and I know what like sports means to like, oh, the state of Ohio, like obviously whether it's Ohio State or like the Cavs or, the Guardians now or like the Browns for that matter. I just know that it's like it means so much to that. Like, well, like sports teams mean so much to that state.
They do. Yeah. And it's, again, for me, yeah, being a big, again, growing up, like, especially when I got a little bit older, basketball became a big interest. Of course, because LeBron was drafted by the Cavs, right?
Yeah.
He's like 5 years older than me or something. So, I was like
Hmm.
12 or 13 at the time. And, of course, immediately just got entranced with basketball. And basketball is a great sport for me to follow because it's also very nerdy, especially, a lot of the discourse around it. And that's something that
Of
I
course.
love. But I'll never forget, the moment when the Cavs won, the
Hmm.
championship back in 2016, that legendary game seven. I was in
Oh,
Chicago at
nuts.
the time with my girlfriend, she's now my wife, and literally I just cried in her arms when they won. And of course, I go to work the next day and I tell my
Mhm.
boss, like, hey, when they have their parade, I'm off for 2 days.
Yeah.
And so like I took work off. I drove back, to the Cleveland area. I grew up in Canton, about an hour south.
Hmm.
And when they finally announced the parade, I woke up with my dad at like 5 in the morning, I think, or something like that, to go to the parade. And we had to drive an hour, find somewhere to park. Wanted to make sure we got there early enough, and we just spent the day, walking around downtown Cleveland at the parade.
That's awesome.
Yeah, nothing. I'll never regret that. Again, that's a memory that I'll always have. And with how the Browns are, I don't think they'll ever get to a Super Bowl in my lifetime, unfortunately,
Mm.
with how they are managed and everything. But there's always hope, especially for the Cavs. They're 8-0, you know,
Hmm.
right now, and they're playing tonight, I think, New Orleans. And the Guardians, of course, just missed out on the World Series, but they've got a really exciting squad. So yeah, and of
Oh,
course
for sure.
the
Mm.
Buckeyes are always good, and I went to Notre Dame, so I can't root too much for the Buckeyes, but
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so I grew up an SC fan, but my grandpa on my mom's side was a big Notre Dame fan.
okay.
So I kind of grew up with both. Like I knew the Notre Dame fight song before I knew the SC fight song.
Oh wow,
But like so there was always this big rivalry between my dad's side and then my mom's side. So it was like a whole thing.
Yep.
But yeah, so I'm like now I'm just like I don't like I do love college sports and I love SC and I love watching the game, but I just don't let it bother me like I used to. Like now I'm like, dude, it's just a game. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But one thing real quick, that must have been so cool to spend that time with your dad at the parade.
Mhm.
That was probably, like you said, a core memory and something that you'll never forget. And like the 2 days of work, oh well, you know, you
Yeah.
get to spend that time with your dad, and that's freaking cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It was amazing. Hopefully I can do that again, in 7 months when the Cavs win the championship again or something like that. Who knows?
They have a good young team. I mean, like both. I feel like in baseball and in basketball, they have two really good young teams.
They do. Yeah. They're always exciting.
Oh, for sure. Last thing I wanted to ask you. Oh, actually, two things. We'll start with your favorite food to pair with a beer.
Oh, man.
I know it's a tough question. I used to narrow it down and say like pizza, wings, burgers, or tacos. But
Sure.
lately I've just letting everybody like widen this question because sometimes they get some weird answers that are cool. So
Yeah. I mean, for me, like, like good pizza, like pizza and
Mhm.
beer, like
Yeah.
it works. It's just like, it's almost like a match made in heaven sort of thing. It doesn't matter what the type of beer is. IPAs,
Mhm.
of course, lagers, stouts go well with it too. If I'm going for something maybe a little bit more refined, I'll say mussels.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Especially like, again, mussels can pair, depending on what type of mussels they are, they can pair really well with IPAs. Of course, they pair well with Belgian beers, saisons, wits, even wheat type beers. But I like mussel, like if you're doing just like kind of a traditional mussel, I like it with a porter or a stout, a drier porters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, I'm trying to think of there was somebody I had on back. I want like it was a while back, but one of the things they mentioned was it was a type of seafood. It might have been. It might have been no.
Or like
It was like
oysters maybe, because
I
like
might have been oysters. Yeah, I think it was oysters that they said. Yeah, and I was like, man, that's like because mine. I'm like, man, like give me wings or a burger or like tacos too. I love it all, but yeah, pizza as well.
Yeah.
But like
Pizza
when
and beer.
on pizza, like a burger, like a crispy pilsner with like some hot wings. It's
Mhm.
oh man, it's tough to beat too.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to ask you was what the craft beer community means to you, and also like with Pinter, like what like obviously because it seems like when you were talking about it earlier, it seems like you're so passionate about it, and I love hearing that. So like if you have for both of those things, what the craft beer community means to you, and then like what it means to bring Pinter into that community.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the craft beer community, it's really hard, I think, for me to kind of put into words what it means, just because like it's given me my livelihood, for
Hmm.
the last essentially my whole professional career. I've been able to start a family, settle down, support a family, all while working in the craft beer community. But also I've been able to, professionally get paid, have a job for something that I love, and that I can overtly share in that love with others, across the nation, obviously across the pond with my new job, across the globe.
Hmm.
It's something that is, beer is such a universal thing that, you can bond with anyone over,
Oh yeah.
it's a, again, universal product. It's a universal language. And so it means a lot to me, and especially when I was professionally away from the craft beer world or the beer world in general. You don't know what you have until it's not there anymore.
Hmm.
And that spoke to me for those, I think it was about 7, 8, 9 months where I was away from the craft beer world. And yeah, I so excited to be back into it. And when it comes to the Pinter community, and I've heard it talked on some other podcasts where, again, the homebrewing community, if there's eight 9,000, 10,000 craft breweries in the US now. When I started back in 2012, there might have been, certainly half that, probably less than half that,
Yeah.
3,000 or something like that. And, those 6,000 breweries or even those first 3,000, almost all of them got started because of homebrewing, right? Because of
100%.
Charlie Pat Hazen and, the Homebrewing Association and, sharing that love of beer, nationwide, Sierra Nevada, Ken Grossman, all of those, a lot of those guys, especially those early pioneers, they were homebrewers, right? That's how they started. That's how they got into the beer world. So, to be able to kind of bring this full swing back to the homebrewing world, I'm really excited to kind of, help grow that homebrewing community that's, maybe lost a bit, to help find and to help, grow again the homebrewing community, but also the craft beer community to help, bring more young people into the fold to share in that love, professionally and obviously as a hobby, what beer making can be.
That's dude. Yeah, I couldn't have put it any better myself, and that's so awesome. Like how you can articulate it that way, and just man, that's really cool what you guys are doing. And I feel like anytime that like I can hear a different story about something like that, and that's why like I know I said it probably like 5 times already, but that's what intrigued me about the product so much because of the fact that it could bring in that extra audience to craft beer. Like maybe somebody gets it as a Christmas gift, or maybe somebody's looking at it and they're thinking about it. Then they decide to pull the trigger, and then they realize, oh man, this is pretty damn good. Like I can do this, and then maybe it makes them start to seek out craft breweries.
Right.
And I mean, and just to be able to find that different things, and like, oh, you know what? I want to try this other recipe, or I want to try this, or I want to try that. I mean, and that's it's almost like a gateway beer, and we can try to find its way in. I think that's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the other thing about the Pinter product is it's such a low barrier for entry.
Mhm.
Again, right now it's, I think it's like $50 to get the Pinter itself and another $20, $30 for the kit. And like you said, it's a great gateway and it's something that I think is sustainable for people because, back when I was getting into it, you had these Mr. Beer kits, right? That
Mhm.
where you would get them, buy them off the shelf, give them as a gift, and they were still just very tedious, cumbersome, and the beer was, it depended upon your how well, how good you were at, how proficient you were at beer making. And this, we've been able to take out all of that unknown almost to get you a great end product. And like you said, we have such a plethora of beers that, you're going to be able to find beers, of course, that you can also get at the grocery store, your IPAs, your lagers.
Mhm.
But, there's dozens of styles out there that
Yeah.
that you'd maybe never be able to experience that, again, we're lucky enough that they're right at your fingertips, whether they're Belgian wits, more traditional wheat ales, more harder to find DSBs, brown ales again, which can be packed with flavor,
Yeah.
if you really want them to be.
And maybe you would have to do like an Allagash White kind of clone, maybe.
Right, right,
Oh man, that'd be cool. But thank you again, Danny. This has been super fun. And everybody listening, stay tuned. There'll be a promo code out there. But make sure everybody like go check out what they're doing at Pinter. It's Pinter_USA. And is it the same for the UK?
I believe so. Yeah, Pinter__ UK.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So everybody listening, go and check it out. I definitely have to order one myself so I can, because I might have to order two because I always try to get one for my uncle because he's a big hazy guy. But for me,
Okay.
it's like a West Coast or like an IPA or hoppy, like I've mentioned before, like some type of lager or pilsner. So
Right.
now I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, all right, well, which ones do I have to get? So
Right. Yeah,
oh,
and
man.
yeah, you gotta have two because while you're drinking one, you have to have another one going. So when the
Exactly.
first one's empty, you have another one ready to go.
That's awesome. And it seems like when I looked at the whole process too, and I love that it has the app, like, to kind of, make
Mhm.
it that much easier. But when I was looking at the website, that's when I first reached out. I was like, man, that looks like it just looks so cool and it looks so like, easy. But like I said, it could be that gateway for someone and to get them into the industry. So
Exactly. That's exactly our hope and exactly what we want.
yeah. Well, thank you again, Danny. You and I will stick around and chat for a few minutes after like off air, but this has been super fun and I'm really appreciative that you guys we were able to make this work and you were able to come on.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks again for having me on. It's been a long time for me to be able to talk about my beer and my own journey in it. And again, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much and cheers.
Cheers.
All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like I said, great time with Daniel or Danny. I mean, honestly, man, like I love being able to do this. I love being able to talk to different people and hear about their journey, and because no story is the same. But yeah, and I'm honestly excited for next week's episode. It is my brother's episode, the Wild Riley Supply. So if you follow on Instagram at Wild Riley Supply, he does have some new merch. I actually just got his support your local brewery shirt, so I'll be wearing that today to the interview over at Feathered Serpent. Also, I did just drop the Find Your Beer t-shirt on a TeePublic. So but you'd have to go to the link in the bio, in my bio at the Taproom Podcast, and you can order that shirt. I altered it a little bit, but there's a little nod in there to a specific brewery. So if you guys figure out what that is, if you guys order a shirt, send me a message and I'll send you some stickers. All right. Okay. Well, that's about all I got. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Like I said, this week next week it's the Wild Riley. Then we have Feathered Serpent. And then we have the Danny Jimenez, or the Danny from Hop Saint. And then we'll also have the Beer Dead and Brewed. And then I think that'll be episode 100 after that. So got some exciting stuff coming up. And then at the end of the month, I'll be recording with Ambitious Ales over in Long Beach. So super stoked about that. And got some other stuff, other irons in the fire. So, all right. Well, Tap Fam, I hope you have a great Sunday. Enjoy some football, enjoy some beer. Remember, support local, drink local, and find your beer. Cheers.